Hey guys, welcome to a fancy office complex in Southern California. I thought it suited this amazing electric bike well because it's so beautiful and kind of modern looking. This is one of my favorite models from Moustache. This is the Samedi 27 Xroad 2 Open. So 2 is like the trim level. Open means like wave step through. I'm going to try to cover this, but also call out some of the benefits or trade-offs if you just go with the standard Samedi 27 Xroad 2. That's a high step. So the Open that you see here, it actually comes in 3 frame sizes, which is wonderful. It makes it super approachable. It's got this really nice adjustable angle stem, kind of the gull wing, light back sweep on the handlebar here. Nice locking ergonomic grips, suspension fork. You kind of like look at this bike and it's like, okay, well, what's it for? It's kind of a go anywhere, almost like a mountain bike, but with hybrid kind of city features. These tubular aluminum alloy fenders, the integrated lights, this rear rack, which is like compatible with everything. It says MIK back here, and I think these are Ortlieb like pannier lockers on the side, and then there's like another top connector. Some of those may not be available in North America. This is a bike that's going to be available all over Europe as well as North America. So back to kind of the different options here. We got the Open or step through, and then there's also the high step, and that comes in like 4 different frame sizes. So between the 2 of them, I think there's like 5 frame sizes total. Pretty awesome. So you're really able to dial in that fit, and then you choose which like SKU level that you want to get. The 2 is closer to the bottom. I think they start out with like the Samedi 27 Xroad 1, then they go to 2 right here. And I think the difference is like 400 watt hour battery versus 500, the Bosch PowerTube 500. And then you get up to the 3, the 5, the 7, and they have the new 625, so much higher watt hours. You could go a little bit further. The interesting thing about this is the frame, I think it's compatible with the PowerTube 625. You can see right here we got 500 label. The 625 is longer, and they've got this little plastic piece that extends this battery. It sort of helps it fit into the frame. So to me, that was pretty interesting and a reason to maybe consider spending more. You're also going to get nicer component groups and stuff, possibly nicer suspension. I have reviewed the 5 in past years, and I did notice a few different things. Back at the side I have a comparison tool and you can see those, but Moustache has an excellent website as well, so you can go and look through this. I'm going to try to show you what I noticed, what I appreciated, and what some of the trade-offs were with this particular model. But they also have full suspension ones, and I think those Samedi 27 Xroad models, they say FS, and then it's like 3, 5, or 7. So you don't really have the 1 and 2 trim levels. It's kind of interesting. I'm a big fan of full suspension personally, especially if you do tend to lean more towards off-road riding. These tires are going to give you some comfort. There's Hutchinson Python 2. I hadn't really heard of this brand, but I see it on Moustache quite frequently. These are 27.5 by 2.1, so they are a little bit wider, and they got this nice tread. Again, I would call this kind of a hybrid. It's not super deep. The knobs are pretty closely connected, so it's going to be a little bit more efficient, a little bit quieter if you are on pavement or packed earth, but they're still going to give you some float, lower attack angle because of the wheel size here. Pretty standard setup on the wheels, 14 gauge spokes. I love that everything's black. It's kind of what you would expect. Shimano hubs. It's nicer stuff. Now, you're not dealing with through axles or anything here. This is a standard 100mm hub spacing, 9mm axle with quick release skewer. And then in the back, this looked like 135 hub spacing, and then again 9mm axle with quick release skewer. So it's nice that they both have quick release if you do get a flat tire or something. These tires don't have any labeling that says puncture resistant. It's hard for me to tell how tough they are. They also don't have reflective sidewall stripes, but that's sort of a mountain bike feature. You rarely see reflective sidewalls. So coming back to kind of comfort and off-road capability, we do have this 80mm travel suspension fork up front, and it's just a spring fork. It only has preload adjust. You have to adjust those clickers in tandem, and that's can kind of preload the spring and sort of tighten it if you're a heavier rider, or if you just don't want that bouncy feeling. But there isn't really rebound adjust. You can't lock it out. This is pretty basic for me, and it appears to be a straight steer tube as well. I mean, I'm looking at it, and visually it was like it feels like maybe it's tapered, but I couldn't confirm. I actually went to the SR Suntour XCM ATB. You know, I went to their website and tried to get some more information. The reason a tapered steer tube would be worth having is because there are more options if you want to upgrade to an air fork someday to lighten it up and just to get more control over the suspension. So for me, this is actually one of the biggest trade-offs on the whole bike. You'll notice that, you know, the light is mounted to the arch, and so it's unsprung, so it's connected down here. It's going to go up and down. It's going to bounce around a little bit more and maybe get bumped out of position. The light's not especially bright either. This is the Blue Line 30-E, so 30 lux. I guess it's okay, but you know, again, these are some of the trade-offs. You might see some nicer equipment when you go up to like the 7027 Xroad 3, 5, 7, those kinds of things. And yeah, so I just want to kind of point that out. It still has these really nice tubular aluminum alloy fenders with the plastic caps and everything. When I say tubular, it means that they're like a couple layers here. And so they just, I mean, they don't rattle hardly at all. They're very rigid. They're not going to get bent out of position as easily. And you can see on the rear fender, they actually use that mount in 2 places to the rear rack to give it support. And the rear rack is rated to 27 kilograms. That's like 59.5 pounds. Most rear racks I see are like, you know, 20 kilograms or maybe 25. That's a pretty good rack. So to see 27 is just awesome. Got the pannier blockers and stuff there. It'd be nice if there was a little like a bungee loop at the bottom, but these are really set up to work with all of those fancy accessories and stuff. And of course they have the rear light wired in through that fender as well. So anyway, we got the front suspension here, and then we have this 31.6 millimeter seat post, and it's 350 millimeters long, pretty standard. You'll notice they do have bottle cage bosses down there, which I really like, but you might run into, like if you're really trying to drop this all the way down, the post might collide with that bolt. So sometimes people kind of cut the post. I would just kind of like loosen that and see if you can get the post to go all the way down so you don't have to do any cutting. Pretty good, you know, the standover height of this bike. It's very, very low, very approachable, and the minimum saddle height is pretty good as well. You know, sometimes I look at this and it's like, well, you might have been able to lower the seat tube a little bit, but then you want to be able to support the really taller riders too. And what I found was that the reach on this bike is pretty short, and so it's nice that they have like a 90 millimeter stem that can be kind of put out a little bit, because it's like 70 millimeter like height on the bottom. It's a very like kind of an upright body position for a bike that's essentially like a hardtail, almost a cross-country bike or something. But again, 80 millimeters travel, usually cross-country is 120. So this is just a very light, like around town bike paths that have some dirt and stuff along with them. The suspension fork is going to be kind of bouncy. It kind of checks the box, but just keep that in mind. I would say this is best suited, at least at this level, you know, the Open 2, for kind of light riding. If you're like me and you really appreciate the comfort, the suspension, the upright kind of Dutch body position, I might even like bring that stem up a little bit so I'm really upright. I would also consider upgrading that seat post, and that's what I was saying earlier with, you know, it's 31.6 millimeter. You get yourself a suspension post. It's going to add a few inches here to your minimum saddle height, but it's going to give you that nice back, shoulder, and arm support. So you almost feel like you're on a full suspension bike. It's an upgrade I do very frequently. I'm always calling it out. So I just feel like this bike does a lot right. And even though it is such a wave open frame, it's not very flexy. So I grabbed the handlebars earlier. I was like shaking it side to side, and the frame, it's not like you see the back doing this crack the whip kind of thing, which is great. A lot of these step through frames, they don't have this like triple cavity aluminum alloy design that's really thick. So remember I was talking about tubular fenders. The frame is also kind of tubular, and it has these cavities and stuff. You can see some bolts in here. Got this nice rubber gasket and internally routed wires and stuff. It's a beautiful bike. I like that they got the locking port for the key up high. Unfortunately, they have the charge port down low in the path of that crank arm, and this is something that's fairly common to Bosch powered electric bikes. A lot of companies have the charging port here or here, and it's just I don't love having to bend down, and then you stand up and sometimes you hit your head on the handlebar, that kind of thing. I am very thankful though that even though this is one of the kind of the lower priced, more like entry models on the Samedi line, they give you the faster Bosch standard charger, so it's 4 amp instead of 2 amp, so it's going to charge this thing a little bit faster. And again, it's a 500 watt hour battery pack. That's pretty good unless you upgrade and get the 625. The charger is going to work for both of those batteries. One complaint I have about the battery design on the PowerTube is that even though it looks nice, sort of hidden here in the frame, it's kind of sharp, it's long. So if you had panniers or something and you wanted to carry an extra battery with you, you need that extender block, that plastic thing, and it's just gonna stick up a little bit, and it's kind of sharp on the edges. It feels like it would fill the whole bag. So when I think about using these for trekking or touring where you really want to go far, I guess I would probably opt just to take the battery charger and not worry so much about having an entirely separate battery pack, because they do weigh a bit. I think it's like 6.7 pounds on that battery. And then the motor down here, this is the Bosch Performance Line Cruise, and it's really based off of the Active Line design. Bosch tells me oh, it's completely separate build and more copper and it's physically different, but when I actually pedal with it and just the way it operates, see how it cycles that chain, the drivetrain backwards when I pedal backwards, this is very much like the Active Line Plus motors. And there's a little bit of a clunk, like when you're pedaling, you're getting assist and then you stop, it's like clunk. And I think that's because there's actually gears and stuff that are being cycled in here. There's a little bit more inertia or momentum, which you don't have on most of the Performance Line, unless you get I think the Performance Line Sport, which is like a speed motor. So this is a class 1 20 mile per hour motor. It's pretty efficient, it's fairly quiet. We'll go into that a little bit more later, but I want to get the battery out. So using AXA keys, I'm a fan of the ABUS keys because they have this key to like card. It gives you a code and then you can get matching locks. Maybe you have a frame lock. Right here you could mount a cafe lock. I think AXA does have a matching cafe lock. I've seen it with the other higher level Samedi models, but it didn't come with this one. They have the mounting point still, so you could maybe do that yourself, but I didn't see where you could get a matching folding lock. So anyway, insert this into the locking cylinder, pops it up a little bit, one step, and you have to press this little button here to unlock it the rest of the way. Now, I do like that plastic chunk thing gives you something to grab onto. And 6.7 pounds on this battery, but you can see how it's pretty tall, and it's a little more angular and stuff. So this is what the frame looks like inside, and I can tell that there's a gap here, and that's that reinforcement, the triple cavity thing that they talk about. We've got a pad at the bottom so it reduces rattling. This is almost like memory foam, which is pretty cool. And then of course the battery can be charged on or off the bike. Got that nice proprietary plug. Does a pretty good job. I'm pretty pleased with the charging, and in terms of operation and reliability of their batteries tends to be very good. So when you put it back in, make sure that clicker piece is angled up. Now this is the other complaint I have, is that you go to put it back in, you can't just push it in, right? You actually have to get that key and unlock it again to put it the rest of the way in, okay? And for me, that's such a bummer, because I kind of want to put these keys back in my pocket. I don't want to leave them there the whole time, and it's just a lot to do, especially when you're holding a camera. So for me, that's something I mention pretty regularly. Another complaint that I have is, Moustaches use this lightweight, all black, fairly standardized battery cover, and I'm a fan of that. It's cheaper to replace. It's not paint matched or something fancy, and I'm digging that this is a top mount battery, because it's kind of tricky. The Bosch PowerTube, sometimes they have one that mounts in the bottom, and then it's going to hit the fenders, and it just feels like it's tight, and it's a heavy thing. It can kind of fall out. So I like the top mount design. However, the cover, it doesn't lock to the bike. So if you're at a bike rack and you leave this outside, someone could just take that, and then you'd you'd have this, which isn't great. And it feels like water and dust and stuff could kind of get in since this is a top mount design. I think all of Bosch's stuff is like IP65 rated, including the display panel and the motor and everything like that. So it's durable, it's long lasting, high quality stuff, but there's still just sort of extra things to keep track of. 40 tooth steel chainring down here, narrow wide tooth pattern, which is great because there isn't a guide or even a guard on that. We do have a plastic cover, but it doesn't have like a bash guard or anything. So if you did come into contact with like a log or a stump or something, it's gonna hit this plastic thing, and then it's gonna push into your chainring. So for an off-road bike, I was kind of surprised not to see a chainring guard. I have seen that on many of the other products. I did like that there's a clear plastic slap guard sticker though. It's going to keep that nice paint job looking good. It's kind of a rich metallic red. Back here we have Shimano Altus derailleur. That's okay, you know, it's a couple steps up from the base level. 11 to 36 spread on this 9-speed Shimano cassette. That's pretty good. You know, it's, again, no through axles or anything real fancy. It's kind of a city setup, so that's why I keep saying this is sort of a lightweight build. Even the pedals here, really good surface area. They're wide, they got good nubs, but they're resin, they're plastic versus aluminum alloy. That's a pretty easy, affordable upgrade if you need to do it though. Cellular wave gel saddle. It's been feeling pretty good riding around. Let's see what else. I guess just coming back up to the handlebars, nice little back sweep. I like that the grips are locking, dual density, ergonomic, and then we've got the trigger shifter here, which has the optical window, so you kind of know what gear you're in. Another sort of a complaint I have is that they only have the pull trigger for the high gear. Sometimes you'll see shifters where you can use your thumb and kind of push or pull. This one you can only pull, and then you push for the lower gears, and you do have 3 steps for that. So it's okay, it gets the job done, but it would have been nice to see that like Dior or something, to have like the 2-way triggers. And I think again, this is just, it's about the component group set. This is the level 2, not the level 3, 5, or 7. So keep that in mind. Nice little flick bell up here. I like that they included that. And then the brakes. So we've got 3-finger adjustable reach levers. There's a little set screw there. You can bring these in a little bit. If you're someone who has smaller hands, let's say you're getting the smallest frame size. By the way, this is the medium, and I've measured all the specs back at the website, so you could get you know, my real life insights in terms of standover height and everything. I try to do everything independently. By the way, the bike in total right here weighs about 55.5 pounds, which to me is actually pretty good for a bike that has like really tough, sturdy fenders, an excellent rack, and integrated lights. It's like 55 pounds, especially with a spring fork, right? Not air. Like they're doing pretty well. This thing is pretty well designed that way. So coming back to the disc brakes, they are hydraulic. Both of them actuate really easily. It's not like the right brake lever requires extra hand effort because it's kind of further away for the calipers. Hydraulic is totally the way to go if you're going to do some trail riding, in my opinion. And then we've got a large 180mm rotor up front, which is great. In the rear, we have 160. So they put the larger rotor up front because the greater surface area, it's going to cool a little bit faster, gives you a better mechanical advantage. And when you stop on a bike like this, your weight shifts forward a little bit, so a lot of the stopping power actually happens at the front. So good job. 160 back here, as I mentioned. And then we've got an adjustable length kickstand. It's nice that it's positioned out of the way, so if you're walking the bike backwards, the cranks are turning, you're not going to get pedal lock, which can be annoying. It happens to me sometimes when I'm in a garage or a tight bike rack kind of space and I haven't stowed the kickstand yet. Pedal lock isn't tons of fun. And we've got the standard Bosch sensor here with spoke mounted magnet sensor right there. So it's not the really fancy integrated one. This could get bumped out of place a little bit more easily. Again, these are sort of minor things. This is a high quality bike. It's very good. It's just a matter of the trade-offs in terms of how much money you want to spend. $36.99 USD. To me, that's a fair amount of money to be spending, and you totally get the beautiful look. You get the approachability, reliability, and efficiency of this motor. And it's probably a little lighter because it is a lower capacity battery. The biggest thing to me is just that kind of the trade-off in the suspension fork. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the display panel next. This is also kind of a basic part. This is the Bosch Purion display panel. It's one of their smaller ones. It does not have a USB charging port, even though it kind of looks like it. This is micro USB used for diagnostics and software updates. So this doesn't work with the Bosch, it's kind of the Smart Bike eBike Connect app, which would allow you to also adjust some of the power settings. And it doesn't have ANT Plus or Bluetooth. You can't connect to like a heart rate monitor or anything. It's very basic. However, Moustache is sold predominantly through dealers, and they could maybe upgrade you to one of the nicer displays like the Kiox or the Nion that do offer some of that wireless functionality. So what we do get from this display is a nice, very faint white glow kind of all the time, so it's easy to read at night. We've got a couple buttons here, plus and minus, to change levels of assist, and walk mode on the bottom. Now I think walk mode only works if you're in one of the 4 assist levels. So I'm gonna click up there. We go Eco, Tour, Sport, or Turbo. Turbo gives you the most power. The motor's gonna give you up to 65 Newton meters of torque, 300% power feedback. So if you're putting in 1, it gives you 3 back in terms of power. It's very nice. We've got a battery charge level infographic. We got 5 out of 5 bars, which leaves something to be desired. I mean, that's 20% per tick. And so if you're down to 1, are you at 20? Are you at 0? It leaves kind of something to be desired there. However, if we hold the minus button, we can change to a different menu here. Instead of showing our assist level, it shows trip distance, total distance, range. Now see, range is really cool. It's dynamically telling me how far it thinks the bike can go based on the last mile of riding and the remaining battery capacity. So it's saying 16 miles in the highest level of assist, but if I go down to Eco, the lowest level of assist, that says 44 miles. So see, there's a big range right there. That's nice. It's much more useful than the battery indicator. If I hold minus again, it goes back to these other menus. If you get to like trip distance, by the way, and you want to clear that, just hold plus and minus for a couple seconds. It does reset. There is a little light icon in the bottom left, and if I hold the plus button for a minute, the lights go off. So if you're someone who just, maybe you feel like you're trying to save the battery, or you just don't want to blind your friends, you can turn the lights off. I'm going to turn them back on for a second so you can get a nice look. See that side window? I love that it gives you a little bit more visibility, so you can see and be seen. The rear light's pretty good. It's mounted far back from where you put your panniers or your trunk bag, so it's not going to get blocked. You can see it from a few different angles. It's only 1 LED, so it's kind of basic, and I like that it's not at the very end, because the fender, I think, is actually sturdier than the light, and you don't want this to get busted. So a lot of attention to detail here. These guys, they do a pretty good job. And then the final secret here, if we hold minus and tap power, we can switch to kilometers per hour, for those of you who prefer that rather than miles. And before we go for the quick ride test, I want to point out some more details on the drive system here. So given that this is sort of an updated version of the Performance Line motor, this Performance Line Cruise, it's measuring the same 3 signals that all of the Bosch mid-drives do: rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque, over 1,000 times per second. So it's highly responsive, and there's even some sensors in here that listen for sort of torque changes as you shift gears. And when you do that, the motor's supposed to kind of ease back a little bit so that it's not introducing additional strain, which could bend the teeth and potentially stress or break the chain. So it's fantastic. Bosch is definitely a leader in terms of sensors. And another thing that's great about these motors, like the Performance Line motors, is that they give you 120 plus RPM. So plenty of rotation per minute support, meaning if you're pedaling really fast because you switch to a lower gear, maybe you're coming up to a hill or something, or you just like to spin, the motor can keep up pretty well. I can, and I will in the review video, try to outpace it and try to show you what that's like, but for the most part, this is like at the top of their game. This is a great motor. It's not quite Performance Line CX, which would give you 85 Newton meters of torque, but maybe you're going to save a little bit more energy, which means you don't need quite as big a battery. You save some money, save some weight. I think this is plenty good for a bike like this, and given that it's Class 1, you can go on more mountain bike trails legally versus a Class 3 motor. So I think that's about it. Let's take it out, go for a ride. Okay, so I'm all mounted up. I'm in the highest level of assist here, because I want you to hear the motor. And I'm gonna go off the curb up here too, so you can listen for the fenders and stuff, see if there's any rattling. Pretty nice. The only rattling I heard was actually the kickstand bouncing down a little bit, because it's on a spring, so it just went whoosh. But otherwise, it's very quiet. And because this has the mountain tires, you know, the larger 27.5 wheel size and a little bit more width, the bike tracks very nicely. I can ride with no hands, no problem. It just feels very comfortable. Go get up to like 18, 19 miles per hour very easily, and then braking is super smooth. Hear a little bit of a, you could hear kind of a tick in there. Maybe there's a little bit of a bend on the disc brake rotor or something. That's something to keep in mind if you're a person who rides to work, or you ride in public a lot and you're parking at those bike racks that kind of have the metal tubes that hang down. Like if my leg is one of those tubes, as you bring the bike closer, see the rotor can make contact with the tube for a bike rack, and that can bend it, so just be careful. Also, try to not touch the rotor, because the oils from your fingers can kind of cause them to squeak and stuff over time. So then it's very peppy. Unfortunately, you can't see the chainring starting and stopping, but again, the sensors are very good. It's very quick to respond. Feels pretty natural, except for a little bit of a clunk when I stop pedaling, and that might actually dissipate over time, just as the system sort of loosens up a bit. So I'm gonna go to the lowest level of assist here so you can hear that. I mean, I can't even hardly hear it over the sound of the tires. So let's try Tour. Pretty good. Up to Sport. Much more noticeable with Sport. I'm a big fan of that. And frankly, if you're climbing hills and stuff, it's nice that this motor is rated as high as it is. By comparison, if we look at the active line, that's like 40 Newton meters of torque. The Active Line Plus is 50 Newton meters, so this is 65. This is what all of the original Bosch motors were rated at. So like mountain bikes and stuff, maybe 5 years ago, they all used to have like Performance Line. They didn't have the CX yet, and they were all 65 Newton meter rated. So this is still a very capable motor, even though it sounds like it's kind of a lower numeric value compared to the CX. Although the suspension is a little bouncy, it still takes the edge off when I'm going over those cracks and off the curbs and stuff. It's definitely nice to have it versus not. Nice upright body position as well. That really stable handling again. Do some gear shifting. Yeah, and I can feel the motor cutting out just a little bit when I shift gears because of that shift sensing. It's doing a pretty good job. Okay guys, I'm in the highest level of assist. I'm in a low gear, and I'm going to try to outpace that motor and get that 120 RPM. There we go. And yeah, I could definitely feel that it kind of dropped off at a certain point, but that's very fast pedaling, and it was a very smooth release there. Yeah, the bike just handles really well, and the weight is all situated really low and center on the bike, that PowerTube and the mid motor. Brakes are working great. I actually been climbing around here a bit, and traction is good. I haven't had to overexert myself. There we go. Yep, no problem. Try to do a little off-road here. as if I was, you know, riding on single track or something. It's a pretty good, works pretty well. Yeah, very nice. Jumping a, you know, 55-pound bike and have it land that smoothly and without much noise. I think it's a testament to how they built the frame. And yeah, just no problem. Really powering through. I wish there was some more extreme, you know, mountain terrain to test this on around here, but having tried this motor on other bikes and done some actual trail riding, I can say that it works really well, surprisingly well. Well guys, I think that's about it. I have had a ton of fun on this bike. Frankly, I think it's beautiful. I love that they have so many frame sizes, and you know, $36.99 I think is a pretty good price for the components that you see here. And you got plenty of choices from Moustache if you do want to upgrade a little bit. For the full written review on this, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. I do have a comparison tool so you can look at some other hardtail hybrids. And I've got some forums. So if you're the kind of person who wants to connect with like an actual owner, I've only had the bike for half a day, right? So I do my best to give you these insights, but my goal is to really connect you and try to be as objective as possible so you can make the best decision for your lifestyle. I love you guys, ride safe, and we'll see you next time.